it's so complex to be full, multifaceted human beings in a society that is deeply repressed.
Hi, this is Frank Schaeffer, and I am talking with a friend of mine, Genesis B, and she will tell you all about herself in a minute. Where to start? Genesis does a lot of different things. She's a rap artist, a poet, a writer, an artist, a political activist, and someone who I spent some time with on the road with a project called Vote Common Good. And we rode around in a bus and we would speak in front of people, and we'll talk about that a little bit. So you are watching In Conversation with Frank Schaeffer, and this is on Facebook Live. It's also a podcast. It'll be on other sites. If you like it, please like it and tell people about it. If you miss any of this or have to look away, you can watch it again or listen again somewhere else. So Genesis, rather than me trying to describe you to other people, why don't you describe yourself for a moment? Give us a thumbnail of who you are, what you do, what your interests are, and then let's take it away and talk a little bit about your new album as well. So let's just start with you and then move to the music.
Sure. Well, first off, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure always to converse with you, whether it's in front of an audience or alone. Just a little bit about me. I'm a pretty simple person. I like to create, period. I just love to create. I love to use my imagination to challenge other people's imaginations of what could be, what our society could be on a macro scale, or what our lives can be individually. And I move with love. I move with purpose. I listen to my inner child and I create from that space.
Well, you know, one of the things I wanted to mention to folks, and I think I'll just choose to start here. When we were on the road together, I think we were in Fresno, California, there was an evening when we would put together these projects, and we had different speakers. There was you and there was me, and there were other people on the road with us, Samir, and others who are friends, and we would speak in front of various audiences. And one night we had a group of people arrive who were very rowdy and threatening and were either part of the Proud Boys or a similar group. I think we were in Fresno, if I remember rightly. It was a little bit scary because they were carrying signs protesting us being there because we were campaigning for Democratic congressional candidates in the 2018 election. Ted Lieu, by the way, when I interviewed him, Representative Ted Lieu of California the other day, Genesis, I don't know if you caught this, credited what we all were doing with Vote Common Good as contributing to flipping the House in 2018. And so he talked about that. So that was great. But
it's beautiful.
When I saw these protesters out there carrying their signs on 2x4s and looking not just rowdy, but threatening, and listening to them hassle the people talking, and there weren't very many of us. They outnumbered us, actually, and they even outnumbered our audience. It was a threatening situation. It was at night, and I saw cops arriving, and I was wondering if some of us were going to get hurt or worse. So I got up there and I did a little something and I talked and so forth and so on, and I was quite scared. Then you got up there and totally turned the situation around. It was something I'm always going to remember. You invited their leader up on our stage, and by the time you were done, he wound up hugging you. So my Genesis B, besides the fact you're a rap artist and do all these other things, is someone who's a lot braver than me, because I was ready to sort of run for the parking lot. And you stood right up and took these guys on, and these were not nice people. And you turned the whole thing around. By the time we were done that evening, because of your connection with these folks, young, rowdy men, angry men yelling at us, carrying sticks and bats and all kinds of stuff, they stuck around and helped us pack up our equipment until around midnight. So I left that event, and I know this is too long of an introduction, but I don't care. I left that event basically convinced that Genesis B ought to just be in charge of everything, and we would all figure out how to get on. But also that you were one of the more physically brave people I have met or worked with in any capacity, because you stood up and took this on in a way that I did not have the courage to do. So let's just start there. I don't know what you're supposed to say after that, but I've got to share that with people watching this.
No, I appreciate your reflections, and I think that there are moments in all of our lives where I might have been, felt braver than you in that moment. And there are times in your life where you have felt braver than the people around, and you just are called. And I know from past experience growing up in the Deep South, I come from a lineage of civil rights activists. My father is an avid activist and author, and a very smart man, like very strategically smart. A scholar of history and things of that nature, of philosophy. So I personally believe in the goodness of people. I truly believe this. It's not just like off of the whim. So I believe it so much that I took a risk with these people to appeal to their goodness that I know they have inside of them, to disarm them, to alchemize their hatred and distrust of us by to be the first to knock down the door for them, to knock down the wall so that they can see they don't have to be afraid of us. They don't have to be afraid of our ideals. It's okay that we disagree, and we could still love one another, right? But at the same time, if your philosophy and your things that you perpetuate with your word and your creativity is to dehumanize other people, that's where we stand up. That's where we stand up and maybe don't become so loving and open, but there's a such thing as tough love as well. But I knew that when I saw them streaming, and this is where the strategy comes in. It's not like, oh, Genesis has this big heart and she's like so warm and the perfect person. Like, I'm a war strategist. Where we grew up in Mississippi, we had to be smart. We had to outthink those in power because they held the guns, the power, the legislation, the law process, right? They held all the cards, so we had to be smarter.
Yeah.
So in that, I saw them streaming, right? So whenever someone's streaming, they're performing for an audience, no matter what they're doing.
Yeah.
So I knew that they were trying to get a reaction out of us so that they can point and be like, those people, they're the ones causing trouble. They're the ones who are violent. But, their audience isn't going to see them antagonizing us. And I mean, this is war strategy that we're talking about here, right? So I knew that by inviting the leader on the stage, because he's performing for an audience, he will embrace me. He will, meet me where I'm at, which will cause his people, because he's a leader, will cause his people to be disarmed and calm. And anything that happens after that, he's a hypocrite if he goes back to yelling at us and screaming at us. You get what I'm saying? So it's not so much that I'm just like, I mean, I am a warm person. I am a kind person, absolutely. But I'm also very strategic, and I think that we need both sides in the struggle of compassion and love in our country,
Well, it made a huge impression on me, and you were very courageous, because I think we were all pretty worried that, we were going to get the crap beaten out of us, but it didn't end that way because of you. Speaking of this, and I'm going off on a tangent now, but I got to follow this up. Where did you kind of learn some of these strategies? Because it seems to me you were very involved in the whole Confederate flag issue. You've done all kinds of interesting things. So let's go there now a little bit before we get to the album, the music, which I love, by the way. I asked my 12-year-old granddaughter going on 13, I said, I'm interviewing a rap artist today. Am I cool yet? Does this make me cool? Old white guy interviews rap artists. Yeah, I think so. I think that makes me cool. But anyway,
you're one of the coolest. Frank, I think you're one of the coolest people I know, honestly.
Well, that's a very nice thing. I wasn't fishing for that, but let's stick with this for a minute. Where do you, talk to me about this strategic sense you have and where you cut your teeth on this, besides the family situation, the Klan and all these people that you grew up having around you. you've also done some very concrete organizing yourself that's borne some real results.
Mm-hmm.
And the Confederate flag issue is one of them. Can you just tell us a little about that?
Sure. I cut my teeth on strategy, political science. I studied political science at NYU with a dual degree in fine arts. But it started with my father. My father had me reading The Art of War by Sun Tzu as soon as I was old enough to read, and understanding the enemy, but also understanding that, and I was raised Muslim as well. So Islam has been a golden path along my journey that teaches me about humanity and love and compassion. And these were my earliest introductions. And then you throw in hip hop, and hip hop is like, boom, bold. I'm going to say what I need to say because I've been silenced for so long. This is where the tough love comes in, and I'm going to stand in my truth and say what I need to say with such conviction that you have to listen. So I am a mixing pot of the scholarship of these things.
Right.
The Confederate flag, I was flung into this battle, this 126-year-old battle, right? Long preceded me. My ancestors fought against that flag, right? My father brought a court case against that flag. My collaborators had been fighting this issue before I came into it. I brought national attention to a localized issue when I draped myself in a Confederate flag, hung a noose around my neck in front of a sold-out show in New York City, and had some choice words for my governor at the time, Mississippi Governor Phil Bryant. And that protest, it was a protest art is what it was. It was theatrical protest art that I also learned from my father. And it blew up. It went viral. It went viral. And that's how I was like flung into this battle, to then working with local grassroots organizations who had been making great strides in this battle, to doing national tours with people like Anjanou Ellis and Judge Carlos Moore and things of this nature. So that's kind of how it happened. It was just—
When was that going on, by the way? Just give us some dates.
2016 April is when I did my protest, and it was the same year that Trump got elected. We saw a lot of racist, white supremacist, neo-Nazis coming out from the cracks of society onto the internet. We saw a lot of fake Russian trolls coming onto the internet to make things divisive. So because I went viral in that time, it resulted in crazy amount of backlash against myself and my family, which I try to protect them from as much as possible. But that was the atmosphere of which this was happening, and people were writing, alt-right outlets, press outlets were writing fake articles about me to incite violence against me. It was wild. I couldn't have planned it. It just happened. There was no blueprint for me to follow.
Yeah, and if you had chosen a moment in history you couldn't have picked one that was more volatile, with Trump going around doing what he was doing. I mean, this was just an amazing confluence of factors. Let me switch gears here for a minute. You mentioned that you were raised Muslim. I've always heard you say something very interesting, and then I want to get to the music, because I've been listening to this album now for 3 weeks. Okay, so that's what we're going to do here. Okay. But you're too interesting a person. You ought to just do one thing at a time. But we're going to get to the music right now. But before we do, one of the things I've heard you talk about on the road when we've been out there speaking together, both in person and then as in public, is this interesting background that your parents gave you while being raised Muslim. At the same time, you were sort of also doing a church thing, a Christian thing, as in Bible reading at the same time. Explain that a little bit, because people are not going to get that. But I've always found it very interesting about you. So you're very comfortable. You're with my friends in New York, Jackie and others who are, you can talk about your pastor there. You don't call her your pastor. What do you call Jackie?
She's like a spirit mama, kind of like a god mama. Yeah, right. I look at her kind of like a godmother for sure.
So I see you in that context, and she is a minister of the gospel, as it were. You come from a Muslim background. Just give me a little bit on that. It's too interesting to fly by.
For sure. So I was raised Muslim. Both of my parents converted to Islam before I was born. My mother was raised Catholic. My father was raised Baptist. So although we had our weekly readings of the Quran, throughout my childhood, the Torah and the gospel was introduced to us as well, so that we could see the similarities between the texts, between the three monotheistic faiths, so that we knew when we got older and we see all of this hatred and division amongst religious views, that we knew and understood that we are all children of God. Even if you don't believe in God, you're our sibling.
Well, that's really interesting. And then one last thing on your parents, what's their situation now? Are they alive? Are they with us? What are they doing?
Oh, they are very much alive and very much thriving and very much working within their purpose. My mother is a beautiful, compassionate nurse. She's retired military, 20 years, very strong woman. My father is a writer. He has a book out called The Seventh Apocalypse that you can find on Amazon. He built him a cabin in the woods on some land that we inherited from our generous ancestors. And yeah, I see them often. They're great. They're thriving, loving on their grandbabies.
Yeah, because they produce somebody interesting in you, and not it's not all genetics. Choices were made, like these, the reading of the Torah and the Bible and Quran all happening. That doesn't happen by chance. They were deciding to do some things with you. Sure. I mean, that's pretty amazing, just to pause to think about that a second.
They're amazing parents. I'm truly blessed.
Yeah. So let me now get to the album. Tomboy is the album title, correct?
Yep.
I have to ask these things because I'll tell you what, Ernie, my producer, who by the way is a charming friend of mine who puts all this together, has to put on the chat session the name of my own In Conversation with Frank Schaeffer, because otherwise I forget that. And when I talk about my new book, I've got to pick it up and read the title. So no offenses made. Don't think this guy's lying when he says he's been listening to my album for 3 weeks and he has to check. When my granddaughter Lucy came in today, I gave her a big hug and said, "Hi, Nora." She's another granddaughter of mine. So this is
my
me.
dad does that too.
Yeah. There are parts of my brain that are working, and I go through the list of everybody, and eventually I get to Zip, my dog, and then my grandchildren really look at me like, "Come on, now you're confusing us with the dog." So forgive me, but I'm going to be stumbling around when it comes to this stuff. So let's talk about Tomboy here. When did you record this album, and where were you when you were making it?
I recorded it in my closet during quarantine. Right after quarantine, I had a breakup that was very difficult for me, probably the most difficult that I've had. And yeah, I was in the process of losing some friends who have since passed. And yeah, Tomboy was just like me finally coming full circle with my vulnerability, my emotion, my sensuality, my sexuality, in a celebratory way, because there was a lot of darkness surrounding me at the time. I just wanted to be just so truthful. Like half of it I wrote while I was recording. I didn't even pre-write half of it. It was just what I was feeling.
Did you start with the rap poetry within it first, then write the music, do them at the same time? That's one question. Here's another one. Were other people involved in the music? Did you have a producer? Did you make this all off a computer? Talk to me a little bit about the actual process of this album, because when people listen to it, they're going to know about it because it's really good music and it's really interesting.
Thank you.
So, talk to me.
I appreciate that, because I put a lot into this, and I worked with some amazing producers. Morris, based out of London, Sygos, I believe he's in Russia, Radesky, who's in Russia. We all come together on this one app called BeatStars, found by my friend Abe, whose birthday was yesterday. Shout out Abe. And this BeatStars is a marketplace where people like myself, I can connect with producers all over the world. I listen to the productions that they already have. I'm able to lease it. I'm able to buy it. Different rappers work different ways. Some people will write before they listen to the production. I'm opposite. My best writing comes when I connect and synergize with a producer. Like I feel the emotion of when they made that beat. and I will match that emotion and build upon it with my own experiences. That's just how I particularly work. I recorded it on a snowball mic, which was $40 in my closet. I recorded it myself, sent it out to my mix and master, Rich Matthew, who I met at NYU in the Clive Davis Institute. He's my longtime producer, engineer, and he mixed it. We sent it back, gave him notes, and it was probably the most DIY project I've ever done, because I've released 7 albums before this.
Yeah, and this is the first one you did from quarantine, obviously.
Right. So I've worked in million dollar studios. I've worked in, with top producers who are Grammy winning, Grammy nominated. I've had a lot of like extravagant production in my past things, but this one, and you'll see with the videos of Tomboy too, it's literally just me and my friends on my phone, and we edit it up nice, but it's like I'm not spending any money on it. It's just pure energy from the people around me, the producers I'm working with. And I love this project. I'm so in love with it because of that reason, that it just comes from a raw place, and from the production to the writing to the videos. Yeah.
There's a group I'm interested in, and this leads back into your album. It's a French outfit called Caravan Palace. I don't know if you've ever listened to any of their music.
Not familiar.
Because they do something very interesting. They use a sort of they go to some old time sort of sounds that lead into pieces that are very danceable. They do sort of, they're on the edge of rap, but it's a little more there's a little more jazz in their background. But you do that. Like, for instance, in The Wayside, when it starts, there's a song, The Wayside, right? Did I get the name right? Yeah, By the Wayside. See, I knew excuse me, F it up.
It's okay, close enough.
My producer, Ernie, is laughing his head off, and I'll hear all about it. But By the Wayside, at the beginning, you come in, we're going to listen to that. It's not the first one we're listening to, but we'll get to it. By the Wayside, you come in. It's very interesting at the beginning, because I don't know what that is, but it's almost as if you give us a look back with the sound, and then you bring us right into the present, and then you take us into a future. I'm not a music person, but that's how I read it. I like the beginning of it. It has a very interesting kind of sound to it.
It does. And
you do that on a couple of the tracks, several of the tracks. You come in with something, you don't exactly know where you are. It's really clever. It's brilliant. I've never seen this before with any rap that I've listened to. The only time I've ever seen you do any of the rapping is just in person, spoken, right. Because we've been in non-musical places. Now, whenever we're doing something together in the future, I'm going to say, hey, come on, I like the spoken stuff, but where, are you going to bring a band with you, or what? I mean, how would you do that?
I mean, bands are really hard to manage. I do work well solo, but I could bring a DJ on, or Brandon can help us, play the tracks, like he did in New York when I did perform something rap. But yeah, I mean, I would love to do a band situation. It's just really hard to manage. I can't manage a band. I can come in, do what I need to do, and be out, but I can't manage a band.
Well, let's
reflection. Before we go into it, though, I have to give the producer credit on those sounds and those intros, because that's what drew me to the beat for me to rap and write over it. So I think that's Sygos, but I'm not sure. I didn't know what tracks we were going to play, so I don't have the producer's memorized.
Well, I was thinking maybe we would play the real one, Knapsack, By the Wayside, sort of in that order. And I don't know if we're going to play them all, because we don't have the video. But let's, Ernie, if you can give us Real One to start. Let's listen first and then talk about it a little bit. If you can get that to play as soon as possible, say like right now.
I don't know about you, but I want to celebrate my survival. I'm feeling incredible right now. Yeah, let's go. Yeah, raise your glass for a real one. You know me, I'ma eat till the meal done. 2 feet dug deep till the deal done. Told your girl hurt me, so I feel son. Yeah, raise your glass for a real one. Real one. Raise your glass for a real one. Real one. Raise your glass for a real one. Real one. Raise your glass for me. Yeah. First off, free Louis from his single sale. Cheers to a $250,000 off a single sale. My girl's Jeep, same color as the fingernails. Cause every time I touch the mic, boy, I bring them hell. Yeah, there's no demons and no fire. No co-signer and no ghost rider. Wrote my own anthem like Osiris and spit more venom than most vipers. No wonder they don't like her. I'm the underdog of this rap shit. Dog days, thought I'd never see past this. When that hurricane came, baptized me in pain. So I pour it on the stage and they spaz doing backflips. Yeah, raise your glass for a real one. You know me, I'ma eat till the meal done. 2 feet dug deep till the deal done. Told your girl heard me, so I feel son. Yeah, raise your glass for a real one. Real one. Raise your glass for a real one. Real one. Raise your glass for a real one. Real one. Raise your glass for me. Yeah.
So I think we're back here. Hey, that was nicely done, Ernie. Thank you. That gives people a little bit of a taste of one of the tracks, one of the poems.
David Sonia produced that, just so y'all know. David Sonia Beats produced that joint.
It's
very
lovely.
Talented producer.
Well, you know, when I listen to these, it takes me a couple times through before I can hear all the poetry because I'm used to your spoken word. But the funny thing is, on the second time through, I was picking up all of it. And then I really was concentrating on the words. And I'm glad that you were talking about this breakup that you had in a relationship, because it informs a lot of the tracks.
It does.
And
Every last one of them.
Yeah. And I found that very poignant. I really did. So, you know, without delving into the personal side of it, just talk me through how the breakup of that relationship informed the writing of the poetry that goes into these rap pieces, as well as the music. Just give me a little bit of that. I don't mean that the artistic process so much, but on the personal side, I really think it really speaks of that. And that's probably why the album has a certain depth to it that I frankly wasn't expecting. I was expecting it either more political or personal in other ways. And then there was this kind of darker side to it that really, really informs the album. But I mean, you don't want to go through a lot of breakups to make this happen, but it worked really well for you. I mean, it worked really well for you.
You really listened. You really listened to this album.
Yeah.
Not just with your ears, like with your heart, I can tell. So I feel like the breakup was like, I've never had to deal so much with the concept of attachment and detachment in a way that we think we control a lot of things, but we control nothing outside of ourselves, right? And when you can love someone so much that you can let them go without expectation or outcome, it transforms you. It takes someone like myself who's already very in touch and sensitive with this concept of love in all areas, right? War, peace, romantic, friend, whatever. It digs deeper. It cracks open a place of vulnerability and humbleness that was unprecedented to me. So that's why you hear this tension, and you hear a letting go, a tension and a letting go throughout this album, because that's what I was dealing with.
When you get to there's a line, I think it's in By the Wayside. Again, remember, I'm terminally dyslexic. This is like just, you know, I feel very vulnerable when I try to quote stuff, okay? Trust me. This is like, I would have taken on that guy on that stage easier than trying to quote things back to the artist who wrote it. Forgive me. It scares the hell out of me.
It's okay.
Okay, but I think this is in By the Wayside. If it's not, correct me. But this line of yours, if you need strength, you can take mine. Who was that written to? Because I love that line. I mean, it could be, it's to me like a motto. If you need strength, you can take mine. Sums up a lot. And I just wondered, because that has such a public kind of resonance, but on the other hand, it also is very much as part of this breakup album. And I'm wondering who that was.
I think it was written for my ex, who I went through the breakup with. And I think it was written for my past lovers. And I think it was written for my audience. I think I've always kind of felt like a sacrificial lamb, whether it's through my activism or the pain that I exhibit in my art. So with my vulnerability, like if you need strength, you can take from me, you know, because I know the strength that I have it comes from an unlimited source. I get drained, I get tired like everybody else. But in terms of my love and my strength, if you need a little bit, like y'all can have that, y'all can take it. I'll rebuild it. I have a reliable source.
Talk to me a little bit about the intersection of sexuality and spiritual life that you have. Going back again to this line, if you need strength, you can take mine. It seems to me that also it could almost describe the intersection of sexuality and spirituality in the life of Genesis B. Now, forgive me if I'm putting words in your mouth, but that's how I took it.
However you take it is correct, because I'm an artist. So whatever you get from my art and it's true for you. So it is correct.
Talk a little bit about that, because I think in terms of who you are as a person, the fight that you've had through your life on the racial issues is one, but there's also the idea of acceptance of the life that you have as a sexual human being in the queer dynamic of American life right now.
Right.
Talk to me a little bit about that. Explain that to me and talk to me about it. And talk to me about some of the struggles.
It's so complex to be full, multifaceted human beings in a society that is deeply repressed. Like, we live in a very repressed society. We repress our love. We amplify fear over love. We repress sensuality and sexuality. I think that it has been really difficult to navigate, and I found ways through art. Art has been my therapy. Art has been my savior of how I navigate this society. And so when I say, if you need strength, you can take mine, I am talking to that young person who feels like they can't be themselves because they're fearful of their community's reaction or their family's reaction. I am serving as an example to all humans to live in your most boldest and brightest and unapologetic truth. Like, if you need to pull from that strength, I am one of many examples that you can pull from for that.
When in your own life cycle, you're talking to a guy that got the woman I've been with now for 51 years pregnant when I was 17. And so my sexual passage is, very different, but it's also fraught. This is not, none of these things are easy for anyone. The difference is, do you admit that or not? So you're someone who's open about this. As I've gotten older, I've been more open as well. And what I would like to know is, in childhood and that journey, how did that work out for you? Because a lot of the folks I know who have had some sort of passage, I was interviewing a pastor the other day here who came out as gay at one point when he was already married. I've talked to a lot of people on different sides of all of this. And I'm just wondering how some of your own experiences as a young person growing up informed this and the passage that you had and the difficulties you had. And just tell me a little of that story, and then we'll get to another song.
Yeah, absolutely. I've always been a very creative but introverted child. I have had the most beautiful upbringings that one could ask for. I didn't have any significant trauma in my childhood. My parents were loving. I developed really healthy attachment styles, which I learned now that as an adult that I've had that. And I'm just realizing that my shirt's inside out. Boom.
Well, and I was hoping with my shirt here that you didn't see this. From cooking for my grandchildren today, the oil stains down below here, but they're below the camera line, so I'm okay.
You can't see that. But in terms of like my childhood, when I did reach an age where I started like noticing the opposite sex and not really even the same sex, I was like boy crazy for a time, but I didn't really know what that meant in terms of like sexual intimacy or anything like that. It was just like, oh, this is what I see on TV. It's like I'm supposed to be with the cute boy. So it became like a game, like how many of the cute boys can I play? I had a song when I was 15 called She Pimp, about me like pimping all these different men and playing around with the adverse roles of patriarchy and like power. I was just always just like really open to like understanding like what those dynamics were. I was confused like any other kid in terms of like, where do I fit in what I see society telling me I should love or be attracted to. But yeah, I feel like I've always been attracted to women. I think I had a crush on my babysitter when I was like 7, but didn't know what to do with those feelings. It was just like, I want her to pay attention to me. It's like something like that. But man, I just love people. Like, I love men with a passion. Like, some of the best men, like, people in my life are like my brothers, my friends, like men, that, and I'm deeply in love with them. But it's just like sexually, I love women. I love women like I love God. It's that deep for me. And like when God places certain people in my life, like especially like people, women that I'm able to be intimate with, lovers, muses, best friends, it's like a gift from God. And that's how I feel about it. It's deeper than just like sex or what you choose to do behind closed doors or in public, if that's your thing. I don't know, but it's just about love and being open and being true and dealing with pleasure. Like, pleasure is not a negative thing. We live in a repressed society that makes us shameful of the pleasure of like what we derive pleasure from. And I'm against that. Like, I'm an advocate for openness and pleasure and loving on yourself and doing what feels good for you and loving on other people like you love yourself.
Yeah, and that comes through in your work and also the album. Let me get to Ernie, if you can fire up Knapsack for us and do about the same length last time. I think we listened to maybe a minute and a half. Find a nice place to take us out. Yeah, tell me a little bit about that. Now, that song also seems to be part of this story, but in terms of the relationship that you were in, that is reflected in the album, but it also has a kind of a general meaning as well. Just talk to me a little bit about the song.
That song is produced by Encore, just so you guys know, Encore Beats. That song, I wrote it while I was on tour with Vote Common Good. If you ask the tour mates before we would go on set, they would see me pacing back and forth, rapping. And it was this album that I was writing, but specifically this song. I was just on the road and I was like lost, didn't know where I was going. I was traveling, but this person was like with me the whole time in here. So it's like I'm running away, I'm running away from my problems. I'm running away from home. I have my knapsack neatly packed. I don't need a lot. I just got a little knapsack and I'm hitting the road. Are you going to come with me or not?
I really like the song. I love the sound of that song too. But just heads up, Ernie, when we get a couple minutes from the end, I'd like to do By the Wayside and do the whole song and play us out on that. So I'll wrap it up and then let's play that whole song, really listen to it, and then we won't come back. When that song ends, we'll be out of there. Let's play us out on that. That's not for a little while, but let's set that up to do that. Let me change this a little bit. Tell me about your relationship with Christianity right now, in the sense that you were out with Vote Common Good, and we were a group of people who were trying to help flip the House in Congress. Ted Lieu says we did help. I was on the bus tour for part of the time, much shorter than some folks who were longer. Vote Common Good was all about reaching out primarily to people who came from the evangelical community, white evangelicals and others. We went to places like Holland, Michigan, other parts of America that were just 100%, it seemed, in the Trump camp. And then we would find people sort of like refugees, as it were, who would gravitate to us and try to bring somebody maybe who had voted for Trump, but was having second thoughts. And our idea was that if we could peel away a small percentage of those voters, that in the elections that were going to be for the House and Congress, and then after that, we could make a difference. It really interested me that you were part of the tour. You know, you played a big part in it, and I think you resonated with folks. Part of that, it seems to me, because you have a sensitivity for Christianity. And I'm just wondering if you can talk about that a little bit, and the sort of Genesis B connection with not just Christianity as an idea and a philosophy of life, but Christianity in terms of a cultural fact here in America. It's inescapable, good or bad. Talk to me a little bit about that, because you seem to get all this, and I'm just wondering what your views are of the role of Christianity in America, history, but also right now, and then hope for maybe changing some minds still. I mean, our minds changeable.
I think the core of Christianity is good and love and powerful, but I think Christianity has been used to oppress, enact genocide, enslave, eradicate other whole civilizations in the name of Christianity. Is dangerous. Christianity is dangerous and can be weaponized, as we've seen, and has been weaponized. But the core of Christianity is what's, I believe, is beautiful, and I wish was amplified more, and I wish it was not misconstrued and used and weaponized to obtain power for some while dehumanizing others. So my relationship and how I view Christianity is, I think, a natural one, as someone who is a descendant of the unique slave, descendant of the native folks here in America, descendant of Jewish folks in Austria, to my knowledge, descendant of German folks, just a descendant of all types of differently oppressed people. A woman, being a woman, being a queer person, you know, Christianity has been used to demean and dehumanize women throughout history. So it's I just wish humans weren't like this. And it's not a Christian thing only, you know, like using organized religion in general for your own intention and purpose. I'm not sure if there's anything more evil than to use the gift and message that God has gifted humanity and the meat as a way to oppress humanity. There's nothing more detestable.
When you talk about God, and this is not a rhetorical question. I mean, I'm really curious because obviously, you know, I've had my own journey out of an evangelical right-wing past, change of mind, different perspective. I describe myself as an atheist who believes in God, on and on and on. And the journey never stops. So that snapshot was a while back. Today would be a different thing. You know, we keep moving. But when you use the word God, what baggage do you bring, if any? What do you think we're talking about? And I'm not, this isn't a trick.
I understand. No, I understand. I appreciate that question. You know, I think God is unfathomable. To try to put it in words is kind of would be an act of my ego, trying to explain what God is. But if I could sum it up in terms of what I am means to me, that's why I call God I am. When, you know, I am what I am. I am that I am. I exist. God exists. We see nature. We see patterns in nature. We see complexities within all different species, within the universe. There's a creation. I don't think that there is just like, you know, some person who just like created us and I don't think we can fathom. But I know God exists when I see a kid smile. and they're like lost in that pureness that just is before the world gets to them. You know, I know that God exists. When I hear birds chirping when I wake up in the morning, it's a calm, it's a balance. I think God is water. I think God flows in and out of us all. I think there's God inside of me. I think there's a higher self that you know guides me, and that is connected to the bigger ocean, which is God. I think God is love. And I don't mean that in the cliche way, but I think I see God most purely when I'm in love. And I'm in love constantly, and not with people. That's not what I mean. I'm just like in the person who is in love. I'm just in love all the time. You know, I get passionate about the smallest things because I see God in it.
We have a comment someone just dropped in here saying, knowing that Genesis has said no to a lot of press and interviews, a comment from Claire. This is a lovely young woman, and the world would be so lucky to have many more like her. Thank you for this interview. So thank you, Claire, for sharing that with us. I feel exactly the same way.
Thank you.
I'm a big Genesis B fan, and I'm a fan of your album as well. You know, I have a question for you now about me. When I pray in the morning, people say, well, why do you still pray if you're an atheist who believes in God and you describe yourself as not knowing whether you're hurt or not? And I said, well, that's how I was raised. You got a problem with that? In the sense that we all bring our baggage with us. And what better reason do we have than saying, well, this makes me comfortable. I was raised this way. It's like asking someone, well, how could you like this kind of food? Well, hey, my mother used to fix it for me. You got a problem with that? I mean, what's more precious than who we are? But I have to honestly tell you, I do pray, and I pray with faith, but I have no idea whether I'm ever heard or anything changes because of that. And yet I don't stop. So what do you make of that? I mean, this is just you and me talking now. We'll forget that this is an interview other people can hear. What do you think about that?
I think that if there is not a God, which there's very possible, maybe probable, it might be probable that there's no God. I'm that type of person where, I don't know. I can just go by for what I know. But for you, even if there's not a God, what you do know is that you exist. And what you do know is the depths of your consciousness, and then throughout your life, as long as you've been on this earth, you've explored different depths of your consciousness, whether in your dreams or in your vulnerability, in your pain of like what you're capable of doing in your anger. And like, you exist. So it's like, that there's a higher self, that there's a lower self, there's a primal part of us as humans, and there's a higher consciousness of choice in us as humans. And even if you're praying just to explore that and to try to speak to your own self and pull out the best that is inside of you so that you might radiate and serve those around you, nature around you, humans around you, your grandkids, like even if that is where the comfort is drawing you towards, it doesn't have to be, we pray and hope that God changes things. Like we have the power to change things. And my grandma, before she passed away, Violet Schmitz, my grandmother, I love her. She told me, don't be a pew warmer. She was a proud Christian her whole life. Don't be a pew warmer, meaning don't just sit in the pews of the church and pray for change. Go out into the world and help people. Go out into the world and serve as an example of light and love.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it comes from that sense of powerlessness to protect those we love most. Speaking of grandchildren and others, I have a friend now whose son is very ill. And I tell him I'm praying for his son, and I am. I remember him along with my own kids. I'm not expecting anything in particular, but that sense of powerlessness to help others when they're outside of our, where it's beyond what we can do. I experienced this so vividly when my son, who was a Marine, was fighting in Afghanistan at the beginning of that war. He went into the Marines after high school, served in Afghanistan, got out, went to the University of Chicago, has a whole life. He's the father of these grandchildren I take care of. But the utter powerlessness of being a parent of someone now literally beyond the realm of even contact, let alone help. When you pray in those conditions, prayer is a very simple thing. It's kind of begging for mercy, but it's not just mercy from God. It's sort of just mercy mercy from the universe, mercy, because there is nothing else. And when you're thrown back on that, put it this way, I would not want to live without that possibility, knowing full well that I don't even know whether there's anybody listening, let alone anything ever changes. That may make no sense to anyone, but I never claim to be a rational anything. I mean, paradox is where I exist. So I don't know what you think about that. I mean, how do you see that? You already gave a good answer, but I'm asking for more, Pastor.
Yeah, I mean, when I pray, it's more just coming from a place of gratitude. I very rarely ask for anything when I pray. Definitely not anything worldly, like money or these things, because I know like my Creator has provided for me throughout my whole life, even when I thought I couldn't. But one thing I do ask when I ask is I have little nieces. Three beautiful little nieces, and like I always ask God to walk with them the way that God has walked with me in my childhood, because like I said, I was really privileged, like just knowing the statistics on like child abuse and all types of emotional, verbal, physical, like I was really blessed to like dodge that. And even as a teenager, putting myself in really crazy situations that I look back on now, like, whoa, like God was walking with me. That's the only thing I ask, is that like God walks with my nieces.
I hear
anything,
that.
Yeah, anything out. So maybe it's like because of the children, like, we want God to protect them. But in terms of anything for myself, like, I'm good. I'm a minimalist. I'm simple. I'm blessed to have family and friends all over the nation. Like if I ever can't pay my rent, like I know I got places to stay. I got food I can eat. I'm very privileged in that way. So I don't ask God for anything for myself. I just am just so full of gratitude. When I wake up, I say, thank you, I am, for letting me be young, in love, and free. I say that every morning because I'm constantly in love.
I hear that. Yeah, no, I hear that too, because the other facet of prayer for me, besides exactly what you were saying, looking for kindness in the lives of those who are vulnerable around us that we love, never anything material, I must say. I share that with you. I can't remember the last time I've ever asked for anything like that.
Right.
And then on the other hand, just a sense of gratitude, as in walking down the driveway and my little granddaughter's walking in front of me. I want to thank somebody.
Yeah.
Just a beautiful sight,
Right.
or she runs up to me and she says, there's a red-tailed hawk in the tree, and we run and look at it. And then all of a sudden it's like, well, who am I going to thank for this moment? So that sense. Anyway, one last question, and then I want to listen to By the Wayside. What are you working on now? I want people to be able to get in touch with you. And by the way, we'll post all the connections you give us. Every single place anyone can contact Genesis B will all be along with this wherever it shows up. So that'll all be there. But what would you like for people to do for you, for the album, for what's your future about, and what can we do for Genesis B?
Thank you for asking that. How your audience can help me is I'm now in a place where I'm ready to speak very along the lines of the things that I'm speaking about, things that you're asking. I'm ready to speak now. So book me in your colleges, book me to speak to your young people, book me in your churches. I speak to all different types of audiences. I have a message that I know needs to be heard, and that I know that I can deliver, and am the one to deliver my specific experience. In terms of the album and what I have coming up, I'm about to launch a YouTube series called Bars and Blue Cups, where I'm sharing music hacks and health tips for the next generation of creatives. So I've learned so much in my day of navigating the music industry and visual arts. So everything from how to maintain mental health, physical health, to how to expand your career, build your brand, free information. I was in an interview, earlier last year, and they said, if you were to die yesterday or tomorrow, like, what would be your only regret? And my regret was like that I didn't pass on everything that I've learned to the next generation, because now there's no excuse. We have the internet, it's accessible. Like if I could save the younger generation of creatives time, money, energy, health, like I want to do that. So if you guys stay tuned, make sure you sign up on my YouTube, subscribe to that. It's just everything's /Genesis B.
Well,
across all
and I want to
platforms.
emphasize that I have been on the road with Genesis. I've done a lot of speaking in my lifetime, and Genesis holds a platform very well. If you have thugs attack you with baseball bats, hide behind Genesis. She'll protect you. She's did it for me one time. If you don't know what I'm talking about, go back and listen to the beginning of this interview again. So in addition to speaking, she will also be your resident bodyguard for the evening. Yeah, Genesis, this has been great. I really thank you. I love you. I am a fan. I love this album.
Thank you.
You know, Tomboy is a good piece of art, and I listened a lot to it, and I'm going to keep listening to it. I really love this album.
Thank you.
That comes from the heart, and it's meant. This has been In Conversation with Frank Schaeffer. Please like it, and please follow Genesis. Go to her sites from us. Book her to speak. She will deliver for you. Genesis, I loved being with you. Ernie, take us out with By the Wayside. Play the whole thing, and then let us go. Please. Thank you. Much love.
Love you, Frank. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you,
same.
Ernie.
Blue skies falling from my eyes. Take time, girl, you was hard to find. I can't lie, girl, I'm not alright. I'm on fire, though you know I'm on the rise. Shorty left me by the wayside. You need strength, you can take mine. If you need space, you should take time. I'll be right here by the wayside. Yeah, I've been on my own, all alone, ran away from home. I've been on this road for so long that my heart is stone. Came back to the city, she called my phone. She just wanna see if I'm alive and who I'm fucking on. Ride around the city, let her sleep it off. She wake up and she owe me, I can't keep her off. She know I never switch, I never treat her wrong. Her therapist, she hate me, but to each his own. Blue skies falling from my eyes. Take time, girl, you was hard to find. I can't lie, girl, I'm not alright. I'm on fire, though you know I'm on the rise. Shorty left me by the wayside. You need strength, you can take mine. If you need space, you should take time. I'll be right here by the wayside. You and I got no finished business, yeah. You ain't caught that feeling in a minute, yeah. I know you on a journey to your healing, yeah. You know I'm on a journey to the millions, yeah. Ride around the city, let her sleep it off. She wake up and she owe me, I can't keep her off. She know I never switch, I never treat her wrong. Her therapist, she hate me, but to each his own. Blue skies falling from my eyes. Take time, girl, you was hard to find. I can't lie, girl, I'm not alright. I'm on fire, though you know I'm on the rise. Shorty left me by the wayside. You need strength, you can take mine. If you need space, you should take time. I'll be right here by the wayside.